This is a story, of course, that has gripped the headlines and gripped, of course, the attention of all South Africans and even, international media. The 21 teenagers who lost their lives at the Enyobeni Tavern in the Eastern Cape. Now, they're said to be laid to rest on Wednesday. According to tradition, their spirits will be fetched and their ancestors appeased in order to ensure nothing like this happens again. To give us a breakdown on those traditional requirements, we're joined now by Dr. Vivio Mkhize, a traditional healer and founder of the Umsamo Institute. A very good morning to you, Doctor, and thank you so much for joining us. So perhaps let's start with the process. Now that, of course, investigations do continue and there are certain answers that still need to be given and questions that need to be answered, but there are children that need to be laid to rest. How then do we approach this ceremony, or rather the tradition of putting these bodies and these spirits to rest?
Thank you very much, and good morning to your viewers, and the condolences to the families of those deceased people. First of all, I would say it is something very unusual what actually happened, and also if you look at both sides, from the side of various religions as well as on the ancestral side, which is the African religion, it makes one to start thinking, how can you go about handling the whole situation? I'll tell you why. There are two things that I want to start with. The first one is that, one, why it had to happen, particularly in those premises. If I'm saying those premises, it could have happened in any premises, but why, first of all, it had to happen like that? That's the first thing. That's how an African person will always think and say, yes, fine, it has happened, but why it had to happen? And then the second one will be, how do we, as we have already asked me that, how do we go about, what sort of rituals, what sort of ceremonies do we do? Are we handling it as a group, or are we handling the whole situation as family individuals? Now, I would assume that those were young people coming from different backgrounds in terms of religions, in terms of belief systems, and therefore it will be a matter of families. How do they want to handle them? Do they take their loved ones, maybe one by one, and go and do the ritual, or maybe and do the burial process? Or maybe is it done collectively? If it is collectively, how it is actually done? Now, let me go back to the first statement which I raised, where I said why it had to happen. That is very critical and important, because what you find is that in our African religion and belief systems is that there are those kinds of evil spirits. There are those kinds of spirits which were actually never nurtured, or maybe nothing was done for them, and then they seem to break fire and they cause such bad tragedies as we have seen today.
Doctor, what then if a parent says this was purely the will of God? You've mentioned that these 21 teenagers, they may all be coming from different backgrounds, coming from different belief systems, and one or two, three or four, maybe even five, do not believe that this has anything to do with traditional dark forces, and that this is purely just, the will of God. Their child lived their life until where God felt it was necessary and has now brought them back home. So there's no need for there to be, any traditional processes. How then, as a traditional healer, would you, address a parent like that?
Look, I must be honest with you. We are living in a country where all religions are treated equally, where all religions are equal. And also people, their different belief systems must actually be respected. If a parent, look, as an African spiritualist and also as a traditional healer, it means I am actually dealing with connectivity and interconnectivity, which is actually the ancestors, the people, the ancestors, and at the end of the day, the God. Now, if a person says, I'm a Roman Catholic person, I'm a Christian, I will actually bury my own child in a Christian way. That is good. But at the end of the day, remember that there are actually certain, how can I call it, not necessarily rituals, but ways in which they are used in that context of Christianity. For instance, they will be praying, there will be holy water, there will be whatever the case may be. That is why I am saying that we can't use a blanket statement where we say this was due of maybe the ancestral ways or whatever. But what I would suggest, if you speak of devil spirits, or sorry, of evil spirits, therefore, if spirits are evil, they come in different ways, whether you are in a Christian religion or maybe whatever religion and so on. So I think we are here confronted with a situation where the nation as a whole must actually not say it's because of this and it must be done like this. I think it must depend to those families, how do they want to treat their own things? Because when we talk about healing, that is why you qualify it by saying traditional healing. The other one will say Western healing. But at the end of the day, you are healing not the body, but you are healing the mind and the spirit of that particular person.
Dr. Mkhize, answers have been given by the necessary authorities who've been doing the investigations. Chemical, of course, it was a matter of chemical suffocation, I think it is what the authorities did say. But then there are answers that families want from the people who own that establishment. How important is it now? Now you're speaking to somebody who follows and of course is about traditional customs to the T. How then do you speak to them in terms of what they do going forward? Because there are answers that they want from the people that own this establishment, so as for them to, firstly heal better, find that closure, and perhaps be able to completely do this process for their child. They want those answers, but those answers have not yet properly come from the people who own this establishment.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. You kept on cutting. Could you please repeat your question again?
I'll try and keep it a little concise, in fact, Doctor. What I'm saying is there are answers that have been given by the authorities to the families, but then there are questions that have been raised to the people who own this establishment, Enyobeni Tavern. So those families that want to do the traditional process when they are going to put their children to rest, they want those answers. How important are those answers from the people who own the establishment in completing this traditional process?
I think the owners, they must actually be very liberal. The owners, we can't blame them, but it takes me back to the first statement which I read to say why it happened particularly in that establishment or in that particular place. So I think the owners, they must allow the families or the parents of those teenagers to perform their own rituals as per their own religions. Because at the end of the day, let me give an example in an African context, for instance, if those spirits of those teenagers are not fetched, they will keep on haunting that place. They will keep on haunting the place of the owners or even the owners themselves. So whether the owners have a different belief or whatever, let them be open. Let them allow the families to do whatever they want to do. If maybe there's a teenager that was from a Methodist church or maybe from a Shembe religion or for African religion context, let those rituals be done. And also, if they demand certain answers, those answers must be addressed. That is why I said, or I keep on saying, it mustn't be a blanket statement where we say, okay, because it happened, therefore it must be treated equally and so on. There are those parents who will still continue to say, we want to do certain performances of rituals. We still want to do 1, 2, 3 for the sake of our beloved child.
Can the owners also play somewhat of a part in this? And I ask this question in the sense that can they themselves, perhaps, if of course they do believe in traditional customs and traditional beliefs and processes, can they too do their own traditional processes, their own cleansing of their establishment in assisting the families to find closure and in assisting the families to be able to take the spirits of their children and lay them to rest in peace?
I think that is the great statement. Whether you are in whatever religion, the place at the end of the day will have to be cleansed. If they are actually people who are real Africans and who believes in an African religion, they will have to do some rituals which will actually be doing the cleansing. That is why I said if certain spirits are not fetched from that place, they will keep on coming back and haunt that particular place. We will find different incidences happening now and again. Whether they are Christians, they will have to do it in a Christian way. They have to cleanse it in one way or another. Some people, they do the cleansing by bringing church people, they pray, and they use holy water or whatever. African people, they use whatever they use, like for instance, use different animals, the goat or the cow, but so long as it has been cleansed. That is why we find most places, like on the roads, people dying and so on, because all these people who die there, their spirits, they don't get fetched, and also there's no cleansing that is done in whatever way or in whatever form.
Dr. Mkhize, we will leave it there with you. Thank you so much for helping us understand, of course, the traditional part of the process of laying these 21 lives to rest. Of course, that's going to be happening on Wednesday. The 21 teenagers, of course, one of them as young as 13, losing their lives at the Enyobeni Tavern last weekend. Of course, it was a story that broke here on ENCA. Of course, we got our reporter, of course, Enyobeni Tragedy, so on the scene there. He was speaking to different people, including some of the families. This has been a story that has shocked the country, has also, come to grab the attention of the international community as well, because it is that bizarre, that how does something of this nature happen? But of course, that we appreciate Dr. Mkhize's contribution to the conversation. He is a traditional healer and the founder of the Umsamo Institute.